Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength, teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wings. For we are your righteousness. If we die to ourselves and live through your death, we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength, teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wings. For we are your righteousness. If we die to ourselves and live through your death, we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength, teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wings. For we are your righteousness. If we die to ourselves and live through your death, we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. We shall be born again to be blessed in your love.
The psalm starts out from the very from the very front of this psalm. He starts out by saying, "Those who trust in the Lord are as Mount Zion, which cannot be moved, but abides forever." It reminds me of the young lady who was caught in a house fire, and as the fire raged, as the fire became more intense, that the paramedics and the firefighters and all of the first responders, they pleaded with this young lady to jump, or this fire was going to consume her. The paramedics took their turn in pleading with this young lady. The firefighters took their turn in pleading with this lady, to this young girl, to jump so that they could save her. The police officers pleaded with this young girl to jump so that this fire would not consume her. But she would not move. And as the fire raged, as the smoke got worse, and she couldn't see, she stands by the window, and they're hollering and they're screaming for her to move, make a decision. But one of the things that took place that they noticed is that when they got in touch with this young girl's father, he ends up coming up to the house. He's nervous, he's scared, he doesn't know how to process all of this. But the one thing that the father does, he yells to his daughter, he screams to her, "Sweetheart, jump. I will save you. Sweetheart, leap into my arms. I promise you, I'll protect you." And that young girl jumps. She leaps without any hesitation. Well, what was it that would cause this young girl to jump? What was it that the firefighters couldn't do, that the paramedics couldn't do, that the police officers couldn't do? Why was it they were unable and unsuccessful to get this young girl to jump so that they could save her. It was because she was unfamiliar with their voice. And let me tell you, church, well, when we're talking about trusting God, when we're talking about depending on God in our prayer life, depending on God in our service, in our faith walk with him, we've got to grow familiar with the voice of God, not just an occasional talk with God, not just a casual talk with God, but it must be a daily, intentional, deliberate conversation and communing with God, so that when we are faced with some adversities that could consume us, when we are faced with some trials that could take us under, we hear the voice of God. We learn to lean upon God. We trust God with every ounce of our being, so that we, when we need saving, when we need deliverance, will know when we need to talk with God and when to hear his voice. But it was something else that's striking. What else would cause this girl to jump? It's because she was familiar. It's because her mindset had been trained, not just some of the time, but she had been in communion and fellowship with her father quite often. And so many times we miss the lessons in our prayer service and our fasting. We miss those essential components to what we need in order to strive and to do great things with God. Is because we only consider God an occasional time to commune with him. We only come to God when we need God. But I must suggest to you that you must seek God when things are good, and you must seek God when things are in the valley. You must seek God, because the practice that you exhibit when things are good will lead you to seek God, commune with God, to trust God when things are adverse in your life. And so notice the psalmist says, those who trust in the Lord are as Mount Zion, which cannot be moved, but they abide forever. Well, what do we have? We have, when you trust, when you put complete faith in God, when you are assured of the things of God and who he is and what God is capable of doing in you and through you, then you have stability, you have constancy, and you have security. Three things that we find right there just in this first verse, that God, those who trust him, those who put complete faith in him, complete assurance and reliance on him, he says you have stability, you have constancy, and you have security. This is the child of God that isn't swayed to and fro. This is the child of God that doesn't vacillate between whether they're going to serve God today or tomorrow. This is the child of God that sticks with God, that stays with God. And when trials come, when adversity comes, they are stable. They don't look like the world. They're distinct because they have a spirit and a calmness about them that says, my assurity doesn't come from the government. My assurity doesn't come from man. My assurity doesn't come from my job and my financial well-being. My security, my stability, my constancy, and my security comes only from the very one that I put trust in. And so the psalmist says, you trust in the Lord and you'll have stability. Trust in the Lord, you'll have constancy. Trust in the Lord, you'll have security. And let me just give you this tidbit. God gives comfort to those who give him credit. You need to make sure you understand that when you seek God in your prayer, when you seek God in your prayer closet, you need to first acknowledge that God is God, that God has more than the capabilities that man can offer to take care of your needs, to make sure that you are satisfied, not based on what you want, but based on the things that you need. God, you must acknowledge that God is God alone, and God is the very one that I will seek, I will trust, I will depend on, I will rely on. Give God credit, and I guarantee you, God will give you comfort. Now, that doesn't mean you'll be exempt from trials. That doesn't mean you will be exempt from adversity, but God will give you peace in the midst of that adversity so that you can function the way God would have you. Well, the second thing we need, so what we have in that in this trusting in God, the first point, if you need to take points, here's the first thing. It's in God that we trust. That saying didn't start with the saying you see on the police cars, in God we trust. It didn't start with the government when they saw the need to put this phrase or this saying on our currency. This phrase belongs to the child of God because it's in God we fully trust. But the second thing is, it's in God we pledge allegiance to. Watch this. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people. That's security from this time forth and forever. But watch verse 3. For the scepter of wickedness shall not rest upon the land of the righteous. Why? Because the righteous may not put forth their hands to do wrong. In other words, I make sure that as I put trust in the Lord, it induces from me right living. It induces from me my trust in God, proper behavior as a child of God. There are certain characteristics that the child of God must exhibit in his daily faith walk with the Lord. The first one we've seen is trust in the Lord. But the second one is that you must pledge allegiance to God and God alone. When you come out of your prayer closet, when you come out of your communing with God in private, you need to make sure that you pledge allegiance to God, you trust God, so that now when you walk out into this terrible, evil, wicked, and twisted world, you will exhibit a behavior, a character, and a mindset that only comes from God and God alone. Let me give you two things about pledging allegiance to God, because you may say, well, preacher, how is it in this troubled world, how am I able to pledge allegiance to God, to stay true to God when I have all of these temptations surrounding me, when I have all of these things that are trying to drag me down, drag me away from God? How is it that I'm able to pledge such allegiance and loyalty to God? Here it is. You must never allow your limited view of God to shape your reality. Make sure you keep that in mind. Never allow your limited view of God to shape your reality, because the smaller your God is, the greater your problems will be. The smaller the limited view of God will now cause you to be discontented with God. It will now cause you to be discouraged with God because you limit God to your problems. Might I suggest to you that God's power isn't limited to the size of your problem. God's power is powerful to take care of any size of your problem. So you must not allow limited thinking of God to shape your reality. Well, the second thing you must keep in mind, you must never allow distractions that are masked as opportunities to derail your faith. Get that again. Never allow distractions masked as opportunities to derail your faith. Now, let me explain what I mean, because oftentimes the devil is so crafty at giving us opportunities or things that seem convenient for us that are only designed to derail us, to pull us away from God. That's why it's so important we share the gospel with people, because the devil is so crafty at getting people to believe that, listen, you've been making money on your own. You've been doing things on your own. Why do you need such a God? Continue to make your living. Continue to live your best life. Continue to do things on your terms. That's an opportunity, but that's a distraction, but it's really masked, my friends, as an opportunity. So never allow distractions that seem like they're good opportunities for you to do something else other than what God has called you to do to derail your faith. See, trusting in God keeps you on track. Trusting in God keeps you in the favor of God. Trusting in God keeps you committed to the purpose of God. And so when you do that, you then are able to pledge allegiance to God when the world is pledging allegiance to any and everything under the sun. But then he says to this, notice what he says next. He says, God, in my prayer life, do good, O Lord, to those who are good. and to those who are upright in their heart. Now, what the psalmist alludes to, he alludes to a covenant keeping God. You remember God would say to them in the blessings of cursing, the commandments or the law of blessing and cursings in Deuteronomy chapter 28 through 30. You remember God says, now, if you obey me, if you keep my commandments, well, then I will overwhelm you with my blessings. I'll overwhelm you with prosperity. And so what he does, he alludes to God who keeps covenant. He alludes to a God who makes covenant, who makes promises, and he backs up and keeps that promise by his character and by his power. So he says, God, what I'm asking you to do in this prayer, I'm asking you to do good to those who also are righteous. But watch this. That's under the old covenant. The blessing for us is that under this new covenant, God blesses us, though he does good to those who aren't good. That's the blessing that we have in God. That God, we trust God. Watch it. We trust God. We depend on God. We rely on God because it's God who does good for a people who aren't always good. That's the difference in the covenant. Because if I were to leave it right here, then that would mean you are able to earn blessings from God. As a child of God, you don't earn anything from God. You reap the rewards of the saving grace of Jesus Christ and his accomplishment on the cross. That's why you trust him. That's why you depend on him, because only a God like that could save you in spite of you. And so I'm trusting God. God, I'm praying to you that you heal this land. But how is he going to heal the land? He's got to do it through disciples who follow him. He's got to do it through disciples who trust him, disciples who pledge allegiance to him, disciples who have a deliberate and intentional prayer life to God. He says, God, you do good to them that are righteous, whose hearts are turned to you. And then watch this. But as for those who turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord will lead them away with the doers of iniquity. Now, he says, so here's the thing. You need to be committed to God. There isn't a middle ground with this thing. If you're going to be a disciple of God, you've got to be committed to God. And he says the distinction comes when those who trust in God are led by God. Their behavior is controlled by God. Their thinking is controlled by God. Their motives are controlled by God. He said they are the complete polar opposite of the wicked, which means your discipleship is not just about you, but it is about you. In other words, the way you live on this earth will have a direct effect on the world who's moving further and further away from our Almighty God. So what is he saying? He says, Lord, instill in me the right mindset, the right behavior, so that I will use your blessings in my life to be a blessing to someone else. That's what he says, because God, in all of it, God will do his part to make sure that his child is able to carry out his purpose. And what will he do? The psalmist says he'll move away all of the evil. He'll move away the wickedness. He'll make room for you to carry out his divine purpose and assignment. So I know the devil will get in your way. I know he bothers you. He's probably bothered some of you this morning. But let me tell you, the fact that you were committed to getting on this morning, the fact that you are committed to prayer, notice God will move whatever obstacle is out of the way so that you will give him glory and carry out his purpose. Listen, church, the psalmist ends like this, and peace be upon Israel. So notice, I pledge allegiance. It is in God I trust, or we trust. It's in God we pledge allegiance to, and it is God and God alone who we pray to, and it is God of where I get my peace from. He says, peace be upon Israel. Church, friends, family, if you want peace, then you've got to trust in God. If you want peace, you've got to pledge allegiance to God. If you want peace, you've got to pray to God and God alone. If you want peace in your life, you've got to set before you continually your God as the forefront, Jesus as the centerpiece of your life. And I tell you, friends, while your life may not be a utopia, while the devil may attack you, there is nothing that comes your way that God isn't already aware of. It goes right back to what the psalmist says, that Jerusalem is surrounded by mountains, right? It's a protection. Mount Zion wasn't the only mountain there. Mount Zion was a mountain that was in the center of all other mountains, which meant that nothing could get through to Mount Zion except by coming through the other mountains. Well, the psalmist says, God is your mountain. God is your protection. God will surround you. And when you believe that, when you trust that God is surrounding you every day you get up, then you can accomplish great things for Almighty God. I say thank you for blessing me with this opportunity to share with you. Thomas, thank you, my friends, because it has gotten my day going. Trust me, it has rejuvenated my spirit just being with you all, man. So I say thank you. Oh, I call him.
On my knees, I asked the Lord to help me. all night long.